problems effectively addressed in isolation? In the recent HCI Webcast, Preparing Tomorrow's Public Leaders Today, sponsored by Saba Software, Jim Trinka, the Technical Training Director for the FAA, says the good news is a thoughtful strategy can address related problems. But does your agency offer the career paths expected by high-potential talent? If you promote promising talent into leadership roles, are they prepared to facilitate learning and problem-solving? Do they know how to work collaboratively? Here, Jim explores the role of leadership.
Well, when I looked at the topic for today's presentation, it kind of brought to my mind something special, at least in my mind, preparing tomorrow's public leaders today. And immediately what came to my mind is probably the reason that we really need to talk about this is probably we haven't been doing a very good job of that so far. And perhaps we need to think of somewhat different ways to do this in the future. And that kind of brings me around to one of the main points that I'd like to talk about whenever I give these types of presentations, is this whole concept of thinking differently. And one of the first things that I like to talk about with my audiences is that this whole concept of busyness. And so when I usually ask people to have a show of hands on how many people are actually busy on their jobs, I get a great majority of hands that get raised in response to that question. And then, of course, I follow that up with, and how many of you have been asked to do more with less? And always the majority of hands goes up, and then I say, how many of you have been asked to do more with less for quite some time now? And certainly I raise my hand highly with everyone else in the room to that question. And as a matter of fact, I've been asked to do more with less for so long now that there's only one thing that I can do, is what I've come to the conclusion, is that I can only do less. Because I want to talk about some things that we're really going to cover today. One of the things that I really think is important in the 21st century here is what does leadership mean in the 21st century? Is it different? Do we have a lot more information that we today in the 21st century than we had last century? Of course we do. And, we're all very busy, right? So now we get all this extra information piled upon us. It just makes us more busy, right? So when you think about the best manager that you work for or with, think about what strengths that manager had. And when I ask that question about what strengths that manager had, in all the audiences I speak to, no matter what the organization, no matter what the age group, no matter what the country is, no matter what the occupation is, no matter what the mix is, I get a very, very small number of strengths, usually 6 or 8. I can categorize them in a fairly small competency group or whatever kind of thing like that. And it's interesting, that was to me, and they usually come out in this next slide, that's what I'm going to show to you here. It usually comes out in these kind of things. So what I did is I also looked at a bunch of other different surveys. I looked for the government surveys that comes out from OPM every 2 years. There's a couple of 100,000 responses on that. I looked at employee engagement surveys within agencies, and I looked at employee development surveys, succession planning surveys, best places to work surveys. All those kind of things was very interesting, because when you study the managers that are doing the best and try to get what's differentiating them from the rest, there's some undeniable things that always come out every single time that are undeniable to me. And I said to myself, I have to start talking about this, because I didn't go here, but the research led me here. And you can see there on the next page what those are. There's just 3 of them. The 3 vital few competencies: developing others, performance management, communication. That's what they are. What are the activities that actually can put these plans into action? So I looked at 250 different managerial activities, and I compared them with the outcomes that are most important to me. Remember, employee engagement, leadership effectiveness. It turns out when I did a easy for me to say, a statistical analysis of those 250 things that a manager can do every day, only 15 of them had any statistical significant impact on the outcomes that are most important to me. So I'll go on to the next slide because many people always ask me, Jim, maybe we agree with some of the things that you say, but we want a checklist. We want a checklist to see if we can maybe incorporate these vital few on the job. And so I really resisted the temptation to build a checklist for you all because I know if I give you a checklist, you're going to try to solve problems with my checklist. So if you promise not to try to solve problems with my checklist, then I'll give you this checklist. But anytime you go into a project team meeting, even a staff meeting, if you just review these questions of yourself and try to address them with your folks, it's going to make a big difference on how you can how you're perceived as a leader and the engagement of your folks. If I haven't made a business case to you so far, maybe we can listen to another thing here. I did also a study at which managers are very good at employee engagement. If you're very, very good at employee engagement, do you have employees that tend to stay longer? Are they more satisfied? Are they more committed to the organization? And do they give more of their discretionary effort? It turns out, wow, they are more committed. Peter Drucker, a very wise management guru, wrote a book about 40 years ago called The Effective Executive. And in that book, he said that the best leaders and the best organizations gather their strengths together and make their weaknesses irrelevant.